So the next line that we're going to go over is the new recruits, the old men, just showing the transgeneration or the intergenerational wonders of war. The fact that war brings people together that might not normally spend a lot of time together. And then the fact that the old men showing them how to wear their accoutrements and buckle their straps carefully. Like war is sort of a setting of many generations, and it sort of bonds people across demographics. I think that's, and then the unpent enthusiasm, the wild cheers, selling cannons bright as gold. So let's find these quotes. All right, so let's go to here. Let's cut this. All right, so that's going to be our quote. So let's remember, we want to discriminate. So we want to choose different lines. We can't just explicate the whole poem. I mean, that's like you could write a 100-page paper. I mean, at least, you could write a long paper if you were to pick apart every single line. That's like a dissertation. But we want to cherry pick the things that we think are the meatiest. So yeah, so let's put this here. This is going to be half. And that's just a tab. Okay, so I'm going to recruit so we can lead the boys, the old, and show them how to wear their accoutrements. They buckle straps carefully. I used to look up a lot of words. And just read a lot. And that's my biggest recommendation, especially if you want to write well creatively or just even write good essays. It's there's such a huge plus when you've read a lot and you've just patiently spent time like looking up words and looking up synonyms and antonyms. I mean, just being very patient, especially when you're young. You really want to build good habits when you're young. It can only it can help. I'm not saying it can only help, but it's a plus. I think it's a big plus. Okay, so lines, and that's what lines are these? Well, let's find out. So we were at 35 at leaving. So 37, 38. Okay. I don't know how this turned to 14. I think that was because it was. Yeah, so. All right. I'm going to make a quote. Okay, so let's go here. So it's going to be quoted. And that's going to be quoted. You probably want to move in a little bit. Maybe half. All right, so let's move in a little bit. And again, I'm probably committing huge faux pas. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people, some people that are going to be like, no, that's wrong. And that's totally fine. I'm not perfect. I haven't written an essay in a while. But I do tutor, and I help with essays. But just from scratch, no, just these are the first ones I've done in a while, but just from what I remember. And also, obviously, we'll go over the different, um, the ALA format and all that stuff, and we'll go over the different formats and um, you know, Chicago style. I mean, just the different styles that teachers, suggest or that teachers require. A lot of that has to do with like the bibliography, but it does have to do with, you know, um, quotes and all that stuff as well. So here we ended at about 5.5, so we can wear the accoutrements. And then here's this forward slash is there. So there is the last line of that previous. Let's go here. Accoutrement. And comma. And then comma, yeah. So then you can just do comma here. You don't want to put a period here. We can omit the comma, but we don't want to put a period. Yeah, this is fine. I think formatting wise, this is fine. Most teachers, I think, will be okay with this. And I think a lot of teachers will cut you a little bit of slack as long as it follows a certain structure and you've got everything lined up and it's not all wacky and wonky. When you print it out, I think they'll cut you a lot of slack. So but definitely follow the prompt, follow the instructions. Your teacher's going to give you usually the recipe for performing well in their class, syllabus, and then these prompt or the prompts. A lot of times they give you like 2 or 3 choices of what to write in your essay, especially in high school or college. So you want to pick the one that you like the most, and also on exams as well. Sometimes you'll get a few options in terms of what you want to write about, especially in college. But I think this is good. Regardless of whether somebody goes off to college, I think it's just helpful to be able to communicate clearly and understanding the venue. Just from a citizen's perspective, writing a letter to your congressman or your editor. I might have gone over this before, but to be able to communicate, I think, is very valuable. And yeah, this is So there, okay. So now let's talk about. Okay, so let's try to connect the previous paragraph to this one now. So we're talking about all of them leaving while and then here we could throw a sort of a $100 word. Well, myriad occupations, well, myriad people of varying occupations, right? Differing, varying, various, varied occupations. Oh, myriad. Well, we don't want to say people. Let's say Manhattanites. You said Manhattan multitudes before. Myriad Manhattanites, various occupations, all collectively arm themselves for the war effort as portrayed. The war effort portrayed. Here for the war effort portrayed. So here we're sort of reminding them because we haven't reminded them in a while. I don't know, we might omit it, but I think once in a while it's good to remind them of portrayed in drum taps first. And the early lines, right? Because we're talking about it's all chronology. So now because it's chronology, we can say early lines in the middle of the poem, towards the middle of the poem, towards the end of the poem. We can use different things in the early lines of drum taps. Whitman's drum taps for some expert prelude. Some teachers might just cross this whole thing out and say the poem. And I think we probably should. And the poem's early lines. Speaker also goes on, right? Goes on to emphasize the connectedness. Emphasize that the connectedness between the city's people, between these two, among is more than two, among the townspeople. Again, referencing them a different way, the townspeople. That the connectedness among the townspeople, the speaker also goes on to emphasize that the connectedness among the townspeople spans generations as well. Oh, big sentence, tough sentence. When myriad Manhattanites of varying occupations collectively arm themselves to gear up for the war effort, as portrayed in the poem's early lines, the speaker also goes on to emphasize that the connectedness among the townspeople spans generations as well. So that connects, that's like the hook people talk about, that it hooks the previous paragraph to this next paragraph. While, although, despite the fact that, it's very helpful, some teachers are sticklers where every single paragraph you have to connect. But it depends. I think it depends on a lot of things. The class, what level you are, what grade, etc. But I think that later on, I think you'll be cut a lot more slack if you do all of these things. If you really perform well with regards to varying your word choice, varying your sentence length, making solid points, having a clear and concise thesis that can be argued or argued against. And if you perform well on those, I think they'll cut you a little bit more slack. I've rarely had a teacher that's like, oh, every single paragraph you have to have a hook. Unless that's what they're teaching. Unless, like, you're in it, I guess it'd probably be middle school where they're teaching that, where it's like, okay, this is the function of this exercise. This is the function of writing these essays this year or this semester is, one of the large functions is to have those hooks. So, in that case, I would think that it's crucial that every paragraph, and we want to go back and look and see if we can have a hook for every paragraph. Like this doesn't have it. This just jumps right into the body early in the poem because chronology. And then here we go. later, but this sort of is still connected. And you know what? We'll probably end up writing a paragraph or a sentence that hooks a little later. But if we miss one or two, but it still flows well, and we do well on the other stuff, I think that won't have a negative effect on our grade. And that's really crucial to remember. Is like you want to do a great job, um, but and then also I'll also mention this as an aside. Sometimes if if you're always doing that, if every single paragraph has this perfect hook, unless you're really good at pulling it off in terms of what I'm doing here, which is varying your word choice, varying your, then it sounds really I don't want to say boring, but just a little bit too buttoned up, and that's sort of a hard thing to describe. But I think it's okay if you mostly use these hooks. Um, as long as that you do have a continuation, um, it's kind of hard to explain, but I'm sure if you guys are watching these videos, you're probably in this mode. So this is not something, not like talking to people that have no idea what I'm talking about. So, but yeah, these are all considerations, and there's no right or wrong. I think that a lot of this is very subjective, and yeah. So, but yeah, the new recruits. Okay, so spans generations as well. So now let's go here. So the youth and then the old. So the youth is introduced first with regards to learning to having the lessons, to having the lessons passed on by the town's elders. You could say Manhattan's elders. Manhattan's not really a town; it's like a city. Manhattan's elders, but we can like like mix it up. We said townspeople here, and then Manhattan's elders. The youth is introduced first with regards to having the lessons passed on by Manhattan's elders. Um, having war lessons. Passed on by Manhattan's. As the old man. These what's a synonym for old? You could say like as the wise, as the experienced, as the more experienced men, gents, as more experienced gents show, and then we could just change this the new recruits, right? You don't want to like quote the whole thing, so it's really tricky. You want to bring something new and fresh when you're gonna like repeat, or you want to make a really really clear point. Show the new recruits. Um, how to properly wear, how to properly don their wartime garb. So it's creative, but we're not repeating the phrase of. I'm not repeating that. Sorry about that. Okay, so show the new recruits how to properly don their wartime garb. And then we'll call that accoutrements. Um, Again, here the word choice makes it clear that these that that the people here the word choice, speaker's word choice, and then makes it clear. You could say emphasizes, illustrates, central. Illustrates. I'm going to say emphasis. We'll use it again, but we'll change it. An emphasis again here. The speaker's word choice illustrates an emphasis on the war's um, um, organic, I guess, organic ability to, or just say war's ability. Sometimes sometimes you get a little overboard, or sometimes I go a little overboard. Again, here the speaker's word choice illustrates an emphasis on war's ability to bring even different age brackets together. Um, the old men helping the young men, and then you could say and even boys, because not just men, and even I guess we could say young to make it clear, and even young boys. Um, to prepare for their role, for their respective roles in this war. And then you can also say buckle the straps carefully. So sometimes I'll throw in, as long as, even though it doesn't make sense, like in terms of a sentence, it's better to say, they help them quote unquote buckle the straps carefully, comma, and then like just drop it in the sentence and it just flows. Once in a while, I think it might not be a bad idea to throw in these little parentheses with the quotes. But I normally I like this, like as the more experienced gents show the new recruits how to properly don their wartime garb. And then parenthesis, accoutrements. I don't like to do this too often, but once in a while I'll do it. And this is what makes it so challenging, I think, to walk through these essays. Is it's not like math where there's a right answer. It's very subjective. So your patience is definitely appreciated. And there might be different philosophies out there, and and people might disagree with me, both teachers and students, etc. But this is just my take, and this and hopefully it's a plus. But yeah, so again, we want to go back to focus to aiming at the thesis. So going back again, War's ability, collectively, actively fight, work, goal, common goal. Different age brackets. So we mentioned age brackets in the thesis to say different demographics, right? Because it's different. Yeah, because it is different demographics. And then we talk about how the demographics is the generations. Buckle the straps. Is these young, is the youth. And then, so here we can go back to buckle the straps carefully. Again, the speaker elects to use the word the instead of there. Again, this is word choice. This defends our thesis. Always want to go back to that thesis. When referring to the straps, the buckled straps. Which again implies, which again spotlights. Let's just say spotlights. Let's use a different word. Which spotlights wars. Which spotlights the losing of individuality, ownership, in favor of the collectivist, right, and community forming aspects of war. We could say emphasis. The poem's emphasis on losing genres in favor of the collectivist and community forming aspects of war. All right, that's a good. I think that's a solid paragraph for this, or solid description and support for that quote. I think it's a decent paragraph. Until the next time.